Hey Optimancers, Chris here. The Dragonlance campaign has some new mechanical options for players. The Lunar Sorcerer subclass is one I went over in a recent video, so check your screen above for the link to that video. Today I'm going to cover the 9 new feats available to players. Now, a lot of this is run-of-the-mill stuff, but there's also a couple really unique features, and so glad to see that. So let's get into it. I'm also going to tell you how mechanically effective I think these are, and I'll just do it out of 10. I'll give you a rating out of 10 for each of these 5 selections. We have 5 new feats available. The first one here is Divinely Favored. So let's just notice the prerequisites before we get into the feat. This is the first time we've seen the actual campaign being a prerequisite for a feat. Though I've always been under the base assumption that we shouldn't necessarily expect campaign-specific material to be available in just any campaign. All these feats either have this requirement or have the prerequisite of another feat with this requirement. Though there's nothing saying your DM can't or won't handwave that for their own campaigns, and I'll talk a little bit about how these might be adapted to your campaign afterwards. The requirement here of 4th level also shows that level feats, they're just a thing now, and they are here to stay. Thematically, this is really straightforward. A god chose you to carry a spark of their power. Got it. Okay, so Divinely Favored reads on the surface like one of our standard dime a dozen feats, but it's deceptively far more interesting than it first appears. I'll go over the run-of-the-mill stuff first, then point out where this feat gets more cool, I think. So many feats right now just give you spells you can cast for free once, then you can continue to cast them using your spell slots, and Divinely Favored does that. So you learn a cleric cantrip and the augury spell, and depending on your alignment, a 1st level spell of your choice from the Warlock, Cleric, or Druid spell lists. Personally, I would consider Cleric the strongest option for choosing the Bless spell, and your casting ability score isn't going to matter. So even if you're focused on physical ability scores, you'll be fine. Druid, probably 2nd, for Goodberry, same thing, and Warlock, I think, is the clear loser here. Weaker 1st level spell list, maybe Armor Vegathis. If you are a spellcaster, you can do that for upcasting, but if you're not a spellcaster, 1 1st level Armor Vegathis a day really isn't much, so maybe you choose Hex if you aren't a spellcaster. That's if your bonus action isn't being used all the time. I figured we were moving away from alignment in D&D, but in at least regards to the Dragonlance campaign, that obviously isn't the case, because there are real mechanical implications to your 1st level spell selection here. Unsurprisingly, you can cast Augury in your 1st level spell selection once for free, and you can use existing spell slots to cast them again. And also unsurprisingly, you can pick Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma as your casting ability score. Okay, so that still leaves you a decent feat, but pretty run-of-the-mill. And very similar to a steadily increasing pile of feats that provide spells. This is kind of the standard thing now. We see a lot of these feats where we're going to give you a couple spells, you can cast them once for free, you can use your spell slots to cast them, you can pick your ability score. Not that these feats are bad, but they're just not all that interesting. But check out the last sentence here. Here's where the feat stands apart. Let me zoom in. It says, in addition, you can use a holy symbol as a spellcasting focus for any spell you cast that uses the spellcasting ability you chose when you select this feat. So that's not just for the spells that this feat provided, it's for any spell you cast using that ability score. So why is this so interesting? Well, let's say you're playing a Hexadin, or a Hexblade Paladin if you don't know what Hexadin means, but basically we're multiclassing Warlock, Hexblade, and Paladin. It's very common multiclass. So you take this feat and you choose Charisma. Now you can cast all your Warlock spells using your emblem on your shield as a spellcasting focus. Now where it gets really interesting is when you start looking at the Artificer. So let's say a wizard has that Artificer dip. Well, I've talked about this before in several videos, but you kind of need to avoid spells like Absorb Elements with your Artificer selections because according to the rules on Artificer, anytime you cast an Artificer spell, you need to treat it as having a material component, even if it normally doesn't, and you need to actually have that material component in hand when casting your Artificer spells. If the holy symbol emblem on your shield now counts as that spellcasting focus, that changes everything, because now you can cast your Artificer spells without worrying about what's in your other hand. Now, if your table doesn't worry about juggling spell components and which hands are free and all that stuff, then this is just a flavor thing. But if they do, then this really opens up casting a lot of spells you otherwise couldn't because you're wearing a shield and maybe have a weapon or something in your other hand. Not that it's all that powerful or anything, it's just that there haven't been ways to do this kind of thing up to now. And I am all for new ideas allowing us to do interesting things we've never been able to do before. As for power level, I think it's good. I don't think it's a standout. Like I said, the base part of this spell is pretty run-of-the-mill, but the little add-on I do like, and I think it makes it a little bit better. I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. Next is the Initiate of High Sorcery. Different prerequisites this time. We still need to be in the Dragonlance campaign, and you need to be either a wizard or a sorcerer, or have selected the Mage of High Sorcery background. No level requirement for this one, so you can select it right at level 1. Thematically, you've received training from the magic users affiliated with the Mages of High Sorcery, and you can choose one of the 3 moons of Kryn to influence your magic: the Black Moon, the Red Moon, or the White Moon. And the Black Moon is the evil moon, the Red Moon is the neutral moon, and the White Moon is the good moon. Regardless of your pick, you choose a wizard cantrip of your choice, and then depending on which moon you pick, you choose 2 first level spells from the provided list for each moon. I should mention right here that before you make this selection, just be aware that the next 3 feats we're going to cover, they all have one of these selections as their prerequisite. So if you are taking this feat, maybe look at those options before you make this selection to make sure the feat you want to follow this one up is the one associated with your choice here. I should also mention that although the Black Moon is the evil moon and the White Moon is the good moon, there is no alignment requirements here. So unlike our previous feat, you could be a good character and choose the Black Moon, nothing mechanically preventing you from doing that. Now, if you don't already have access to Shield, Solinari, the White Moon, is the one that provides it. Even though the other selections on that list aren't very exciting, I guess I might take Protection from Evil and Good as the second pick. For Lunatari, which is the neutral moon, the standout spell there I would say is Longstrider for sure. And then I'd probably take Featherfall as the second selection. And then the Black Moon, Nuitari. That sounds like my Christmas wish list from when I was a kid. I would probably grab Dissonant Whispers and then take either False Life or Hex. Standard stuff after this: 1 casting for free, then you can use spell slots and the standard ability score selection as your casting ability score. This feat is very run-of-the-mill. So many feats like this one these days, and it's fine. It's a 5 out of 10. But remember, the most interesting thing about this feat is it leads into additional feats. And the first one of those is Adept of the Black Robes. So the prerequisite here is, first, you need the Initiative High Sorcery feat, and second, you need to have selected the new Atari option. And you need to be at least 4th level. I should mention at this point that in the Dragonlance campaign, your background gives you a bonus feat at both levels 1 and 4. So getting these 2 feats isn't all that hard by 4th level. In fact, you could play a martial character, and if you take that background that opens up the Initiative High Sorcery feat, then you could have that, and then this, and still have your regular feat selections available for your martial stuff. So there's 2 aspects to this feat. First, you're going to select any 2nd level spell of either the Enchantment or Necromancy School of Magic, which you can cast once for free and continue to cast as spell slots, yada yada. Your ability score is the same one you selected with the prerequisite feat. And the second thing we get is Life Channel. So I'm just zooming in here so you can see it a bit better, but Life Channel. So you can channel your life force into the power of your magic. When a creature you can see within 60 feet of you fails a saving throw against a spell that deals damage that you cast, you can expend a number of hit dice equal to the level of the spell. Roll the expended hit dice and add them together. The damage that the creature takes increases by an amount equal to the total. I really like this feature. I like it mechanically, and I love it thematically. So let's first talk about the thematics, because that's what I like the most, is that we've been talking for years. How are different ways we might have mechanics that use hit dice or allow you to expend hit dice in order to do something other than just healing in a short rest? Well, here they've put it into a feature where it makes so much thematic sense. Life Channel, we're giving up our life force. Hit dice, I think, is a pretty good representation of your life force. I mean, if you think hit points would even be a more accurate representation, fair enough, but I still think hit dice is a pretty good representation of your life force, and we're expending that to use this feature. Thematically, love that. Let's talk about the mechanics. So this is affecting a single creature, even if we cast an area of effect. So let's say you cast a fireball and you hit 10 creatures and 6 of them fail their saving throw. Well, you could choose one of those 6 and add the damage. So this isn't just an overall increase to damage. It's damage against a single target, but it's going to be the same amount to that single target whether they took the damage from an area of effect or a single target spell. Also mechanically, this is not expending your reaction. A lot of features like this, Wizards of the Coast, they'll say, okay, and then you can expend your reaction to do this additional damage. No, this is not using any part of your action economy at all. Thank you very much. And the damage is not insignificant. It's not massive, but it's not insignificant. Like if we think about first level spells, well, we would be expending 1 hit die, and first level spells will tend to do either 2 dice or 3 dice of damage. And now we would expend a hit die, and so we're increasing that by maybe 33%, maybe 50%. Well, if we look at, say, 9th level spells, well, then we'd be adding 9 hit dice, and so we'd be adding 9 dice, and like the most damaging spell in the game is Meteor Swarm, does 40d6. Adding 9 to that, that's just about a quarter, and that's not bad considering we're talking about Meteor Swarm. If we're talking about something like Psychic Scream or something like that, it's a bigger percentage. So this is not a bad amount of damage to be adding. Now, of course, you're going to have to consider the mechanical implications of giving up your hit dice to do this rather than healing. So you might want to consider, does anyone in your group have Aura Vitality? Well, maybe you want to consider it if you have Life Channel, because you're going to need some way to recover your hit points. And if you can't recover them during a short rest, then you're going to need some other way to recover those hit points. Now, here's something I do appreciate about this feature, and that is these kinds of feats and racial traits that give you the free spells. One thing they have universally is they're better if you're a caster than a non-caster, because if you have spell slots to continue to cast those spells, there's an advantage to that. And if you're a non-caster, you won't have those slots. And that is true of the other portion of this feat. But Life Channel in particular, yes, it does benefit having more spell slots to some degree, but it also benefits for having higher hit dice. So if you are a wizard, you're adding d6s. If you are a paladin, you're adding d10s. And the highest hit die you could add is a d12, and that's if you're a barbarian. Now, barbarians don't have any spell slots, but you could multiclass with a spellcaster, which is an odd multiclass, or just from having this feat and the feat that was a prerequisite, we're going to have a couple leveled spells, and if those involve saving throws and deal damage, then we would be able to add more to that damage. So once again, let's talk about Thunderwave. 2d8 damage plus a d6 if we're a wizard, 2d8 damage plus a d12 if we're barbarian. So it's a bigger increase to the percentage of damage. So I'd love to see at least one way in which the non-casters or lesser casters actually benefit from one of these features more than the full casters. Thank you for that. Now, overall, I don't think this feat is super powerful. Life Channel does a significant amount more damage, but not an amazing amount more damage, and there is a cost to it. And Ambitious Magic is a second level spell, and that's okay. And frankly, the Enchantment or Necromancy School of Magic is pretty limited. I'll say that if I was to take a spell, especially considering Life Channel, I think I would take Tasha's Mind Whip. Tasha's Mind Whip happens to target a saving throw that is weak, and it does damage. And it's not a bad spell anyways. But also, if I'm playing a character that maybe my charisma, wisdom, and intelligence aren't my strongest suits, at least I have a reasonable chance of that sticking, because intelligence saving throws sometimes are just really, really bad. And so even with not a fantastic casting stat, we still might have a reasonable chance of landing it. But overall, the power level here, I'd say it's above average for feats. It's not super powerful, but I would give it between a 6 and a 7. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 7 out of 10. Next up is Adept of the Red Robes. And so it's like Adept of the Black Robes, except you need to have picked the Red Moon with your Initiative High Sorcery feat. Now, the second level spell we get must be from the Illusion or Transmutation Schools of Magic, and that is great. Now, I have several suggestions for spells you might pick. If your casting ability score isn't high, I'd consider either Heat Metal or Spike Growth. They're both fantastic spells that rely very little on your casting ability. Frankly, if your casting ability score is high, you still might want Heat Metal or Spike Growth. But I would add Levitate or Pyrotechnics to possible suggestions. Actually, there's other possibilities that are good as well. There's Mirror Image, there's Invisibility. I mean, this is a packed list. But the pick I would suggest the most, there's so many parties that use Force Movement these days. Spike Growth is probably the standout as far as I'm concerned. Then we get Magical Balance. Whenever you make an attack roll or an ability check and roll a 9 or lower on the d20, you can treat it like you rolled a 10 a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. First thing I'll say is yawn. I'm not saying this is a bad feature. It's not a bad feature. It's just so uninspired. We have seen these kinds of mechanics over and over again. The thing here that really I noticed, though, is the exclusion of saving throws. That screams out to me. If saving throws were on this list, I'd be doing a happy dance right now. Attack rolls and ability checks, that's still okay. But basically, this is going to give you the best free spell available from any of these feats, in my opinion. But I think it is a less impressive second feature than Adept of the Black Robes, so it kind of puts them close, as far as I'm concerned. This might just be a tad weaker, in my view, so 6 out of 10. Can you possibly guess what our next feat is? I know, quite a puzzle. Adept of the White Robes. I know, totally hit you out of left field. Guess what? You need to be 4th level. You needed to have selected the White Moon with the Initiate of High Sorcery feat. And we get the bonus 2nd level spell and another feature. So the 2nd level spell must be either Abjuration or Divination. And definitely, our top picks here are Pass Without Trace or Aid. So based on the 3 feats, I would say the best spell selection choice is Spike Growth, and that was from the Adept of the Red Robes. Then I would go here to either Pass Without Trace or Aid as the second best. And then I would say Adept of the Black Robes is the least effective one, with Tasha's Mind Whip being your best option, which is still a good spell. It's not a huge gap in between. Then we get Protective Ward. Now this is the one secondary feature for these feats that you basically need to be a spellcaster to benefit from at all, and a primary caster to get the most out of. So if you were a non-caster, and then you got Initiative High Sorcery because you had the right background, and now you're 4th level, don't bother with Adept of the White Robes, because the Protective Ward portion, which is half this feature, at least half this feature, is basically unavailable to you. But if you are a caster, well, when a creature you can see within 30 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction, and then you can expend a spell slot. So like I said, you got to be a caster. Roll a number of d6s equal to the level of the spell slot and reduce the damage by that amount plus your spellcasting ability modifier. Now, I'm a little confused as to why they didn't say it's the ability modifier you selected for your Initiative High Sorcery feat. That would have made more sense, I think. Not that it's probably going to be a different score anyways, probably going to be the same score. But I guess if you were like a cleric wizard, you would choose between wisdom and intelligence. But here's my issue with this one. If you're not a primary spellcaster, you have a lot less and lower level spell slots to fuel this. But if you are a primary caster, your reaction is probably super important. It's your shields, your absorb elements, and your counter spells. So there is some conflict there in just action economy. Not that this is a bad feature, not at all. But I definitely am thinking about how often my reaction is even available with the primary caster, and how much I have to consider before expending it. Never mind the fact that this eats up our spell slots. So overall, this one's 5 out of 10 for me. I think the best secondary feature definitely is Adept of the Black Robes, followed by Adept of the Red Robes, and then this one. For spell selection, I think the Adept of the Red Robes has the best options. So we're going to change gears here because maybe you don't want to focus on spellcasting. Maybe you want to focus on using your weapons instead. Here's where our next feat chain comes in. Like with Initiate of the High Sorcery feats, we have 1 initial feat and then 3 follow-up feats. One thing that's different, though, is that in this case, there's no mechanical selection as part of Squire of Solamnia that you need to pick in order to select the feat you want that follows it up. This feat has 2 parts to it, Mount Up and Precise Strike, or as I would call it, the crappy part and the good part. Mount Up allows you to mount or dismount using only 5 feet of movement. The Fighter Cavalier subclass has had this all along, and yeah, it is one of those features that gets ignored because I don't know how much mounting and dismounting that the designers think we're doing on our turn, but it's not enough to make this good. As far as I'm concerned, Feats shouldn't have ribbon features, and this is definitely a ribbon feature. The second part is pretty good though. Once per turn, when you make a weapon attack roll against a creature, you can cause the attack to have advantage. If the attack hits, you add a d8 to the damage, and you can use this, you guessed it, proficiency bonus times per long rest. One nice addition here though is if the attack misses regardless, you don't expend the use. Now with the follow-up feats, I'm going to be making comparisons to things the Battlemaster fighters can do because there's going to be a whole lot looking similar. Remember that we can get a Battlemaster maneuver with a feat? In fact, there's 2 different feat options that can get us a Battlemaster maneuver. There's Fighting Initiate, and then you can take the Superior Technique Fighting Style, or you could take Martial Adept, which gives you 2 maneuvers. In either case, you would be able to use 1 maneuver per short rest, which I would say is roughly comparable to proficiency bonus times per long rest. Neither of those feats, by the way, have any additional features. Also, a feat to get a single maneuver per short rest probably isn't worth a feat, which is why you don't see many builds that do that. So what I immediately thought of here was Precision Attack. Now, Precision Attack doesn't add anything to the damage, but it can be used after an attack misses. So that is way better than getting advantage beforehand. Because remember, with this one, what you might find is that you would have hit anyways when you use it after the fact, so there's some guesswork. But I'm not sure Precise Strike carries a whole feat on its own, and Mount Up just isn't good. So this might actually be the weakest feat in this book, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. I mean, not terrible, but it's on the weaker side. But, like with Initiative High Sorcery, Squire of Solamnia opens up 3 feats. In these cases, basically in the game you can join one of the knightly orders, and they have an associated feat. The prerequisite should probably mention actually being a knight of the associated order, but it is laid out in the description you belong to that order of knights, so that's good enough. So, Knight of the Crown provides an ability score increase, and we can choose from Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution. And assuming you're playing a weapon-using character, these are probably the scores you're concentrating on, so no problems here. Then we get Commanding Rally. As a bonus action, you can command one ally within 30 feet of yourself to attack. If that ally can see or hear you, they can immediately make one weapon attack as a reaction, and if the attack hits, it does an additional d8 damage. Proficiency bonus uses per long rest. So again, this reminds me of a Battlemaster maneuver. Here's Commander Strike, and clearly this was the inspiration for Commanding Rally. Really, the only significant difference is instead of using your bonus action, you're forgoing one of your attacks from the attack action. I actually think Commanding Rally is a bit better, or at least a bit more flexible, because you don't need to take the attack action to use this. So if you're doing something else with your action, you're still okay. How good this is really depends on how good a reaction attack from an ally is going to be. If you have a rogue in your group, this is a good way to give them that second sneak attack in one round. Commander Strike is an okay maneuver, and this is an okay feature. And being that it's attached to a half feat, this isn't bad, 6 out of 10. Next up is Knight of the Rose. This time we're choosing from Constitution, Wisdom, or Charisma. Immediately I figure if we're like a Hexadin, the Charisma boost is perfect. Then we get Bolstering Rally, so still a bonus action, still proficiency bonus uses per long rest, but this time we hand out temporary hit points equal to a d8, plus proficiency bonus, plus the ability score we got in the first half of the feat. So, a fair number of variables, but I would assume we'd be handing out around 10 temporary hit points. I think this is weaker than the Commanding Rally feature. It's not a bad number of temporary hit points, but not a whole lot. And also the existence of the Twilight Cleric, it cheapened temporary hit points in the game overall, and that was unfortunate, but it is a reality. So this one is a bit worse than Knight of the Crown in my opinion. Still not terrible though, 5 out of 10. Then we finish up our feats with Knight of the Sword. Now we choose from Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma for ability score increase. Again, Hexadins come to mind, but this is definitely not the ideal list for just any martial. Then we get Demoralizing Strike. Now, this one doesn't use our bonus action, but we still have proficiency bonus uses per long rest. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack roll, you can attempt to frighten them. They make a wisdom save, and on a failed saving throw, they're frightened until the end of your next turn. And menacing attack from the Battlemaster. It's pretty close, though we're using strength or dexterity to figure out our DC. In the case of demoralizing strike, we're using the ability score we increased with the feat. Also with menacing attack, we're adding a die to damage. But check this out. We have an additional rider on this one. If the creature succeeds on the saving throw, they still get disadvantage on the next attack roll they make before the end of their next turn. So that's a pretty nice rider. Basically, if we use this, even if they make their saving throw, we still get something. Frankly, I figure Knight of the Sword is the best of the three. Menacing Strike is one of the better Battlemaster maneuvers, but instead of the extra die of damage, here we're going to get a fail-safe if they make their saving throw. I figure that's a decent trade-off. But before I give this ranking, there is a weird interaction I noticed. So there's a fair number of creatures in the game that are immune to the Frightened condition. So the way this would work, at least technically, is that if you attempted to use this against a creature that was immune, if it fails its saving throw, nothing happens because it's immune to the effect. But if it makes its saving throw, then it still gets the disadvantage because that's not connected to the Frightened condition. So it would actually be better in that case for the creature to make its saving throw than to fail it. I mean, as a DM, I would probably just say the immunity to fear counts as it making its saving throw here, and you just give the disadvantage automatically, but check with your DM. Overall, though, this is a pretty good feat, 7 out of 10. And those are the new feats in Dragonlance. Honestly, there's nothing here that couldn't be reworked fairly easily to fit into any campaign. Divinely Favored seems to me it should be able to work in any setting with gods in alignment. For Initiate of High Sorcery, I mean, it should be clear enough that the moons, which are actually gods of magic, represent good, neutral, and evil magic. So again, that should just work anywhere. Just change the names. Heck, looking at the Adept of the black, red, and white robe feats, there's nothing in the mechanics that suggests to me that something like Life Channel has to be evil magic either. They don't have to be connected to alignment at all. And the Squire of Solamnia and the Knight of the Crown, Rose, and Sword, mechanically, there's nothing that screams Dragonlance. Just change the names to fit your own campaign, and I think they're just going to be fine. There's nothing here anywhere near game-breaking, in my opinion, but there are some cool ideas, which is refreshing. So I have to say that my favorite things I saw here were I really like the idea of being able to use your holy symbol as a spell focus for any of your spells using that ability score. I thought that was a cool idea, something we hadn't seen before, so that was great. Life Channel I really like because using hit dice to increase spell damage I thought was really thematic and a cool mechanic. Again, haven't seen that before. So again, like new ideas here, multiple new ideas, that's great. And I actually really like the Knight feats as well. I don't think they're super powerful, but I think they're decent. And, I would never expend an entire feat to get a single Battlemaster maneuver with a single die. But expending a feat to get that plus it's a half feat, well, then I might consider it. So these are feats I might actually use if they were existing in a campaign that I was playing in. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with these feats, but I'm curious what you think. Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, until next time, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.